Welcome to Into the Unknown with Mike and John, Season 2, Episode 9. Coming up, John and I cross the Mason-Dixon line to begin our survey of arguably the most famous Civil War battle site, Gettysburg. There is so much history and so many strange stories emanating from this small Pennsylvania town. It's mind-boggling, John. I'm Mike Duber.
And I'm John Fitzpatrick.
All right, John. So this is our part 1 of Gettysburg because, well, you know, and you're going to let us know why.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So today, John is going to introduce us to the battle and the town and clue us into the importance of this place and this event in history. And later, we're going to interview my friend and colleague for many years, Bill Bosworth. He's a reenactor and an experiencer with an interesting story to tell. After that, we're going to cover 2 stories from the battlefield from my family members. And no, they were not actually in the battle. These are my contemporary, living family members who had experiences
on
up there,
the battlefield
on
site.
the battlefield, yeah. They're not, ground shaking, but on the other hand, they are ground shaking. So
well, they were ground shaking for your family.
That's right. Yeah. So but all right. So John, let us turn to you.
Okay.
And we would love to hear, as the historian, the researcher. You've done a lot of work here.
Well, I've done a moderate amount of work.
I know what you've done. And you've clued into some.
We've been talking
things
about this, and my principal concern is, Gettysburg is hallowed ground, and you, as a listener, you may or may not know anything about the American Civil War. You might not even know who won the Civil War. I suspect you've heard of Gettysburg. You've certainly heard of the Civil War. And I just want to make sure that we have some baseline context for why this battle was so important. Because the Gettysburg campaign truly is classic military history, to the point that the service academies still teach the battle strategy and tactics as basics. It is a rite of passage for general officers to make what's called a staff ride of the battlefield, which is sort of a glorified bus tour conducted by highly specialist guides who can recall every detail of the battle down to the last second. People who study this battle with the intent to become tour guides do so for years before sitting down to what is truly a grueling test that is not given on even an annual basis. It's done periodically over several years before they can be allowed to go out and present to tourists.
Yeah, and you're going to let us know the significance of this battle, but there are so many documents that survive that really illuminate all of those. You're talking about minutes and seconds.
It's one of the most heavily documented battles of the war, of a very heavily documented war.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we don't need to go into the same level of detail that those tour guides do to give you that context.
Yeah, we don't want to overdo it, but we do want to do it.
And it's good.
Do it properly.
Because while I am sort of a military history freak, if not...
You said it. Your words.
Yeah, the American Civil War isn't really my strong suit.
But although we have some listeners,
and
I'm thinking of a guy in particular who's pretty well read, so he'll be listening for details, and I'll be picking up anything that we got wrong.
Yeah.
And not that it's about getting it right or wrong, but
we just
there's opinions. There's a lot of opinions,
and there
these battles.
That's the other thing, is that some of these things do come down to even about the wording of a fact become opinions. So I'm going to try my best. You certainly can take any kind of umbrage with what I have to say and put it into the comments. I'm going to try to stick to just the high-level 50,000-foot view of this. So, the most important thing to know about the Battle of Gettysburg is that the outcome of the battle could have decided how either side won the war. Sure, the war was not going well for the Confederacy at this point. There was an economic naval blockade of the southern ports. Out west, the Union laid siege to Vicksburg, a key city on the Mississippi River. So long as Vicksburg held out, the Confederacy still technically controlled the mighty river. On the other hand, the Union forces back east seemed incapable of ending the rebellion. President Lincoln had recently removed a succession of commanders of the main Union Army in the east, the Army of the Potomac, and he was trying to find a commander who could finish the rebellion. General Robert E. Lee at this point decided to pressure the Union by invading the North. His hope was to encircle the capital, Washington, D.C., and threaten the heartland of the northern states, which so far had not been affected directly by the war. Yeah. So in early summer of 1863, and following a bracing victory at Chancellorsville, Lee marched his Army of Northern Virginia through western Maryland and began to range across Pennsylvania. You'd think it would be hard to hide an army of some 75,000 men and their supply train, but this was the age before airplanes and satellite images. Reconnaissance was mainly conducted by cavalry troops who had the mobility to feel out the enemy formations and quickly return news to their higher headquarters.
And balloons if you had them.
Yes, but
I'm being facetious. But they did use balloons.
They did use balloons.
Yeah,
I almost thought about putting balloons in here, but you sometimes remind me not to get too wordy.
That's okay.
And they're very tactical.
There'd be nothing for me to say.
Yeah, the cavalry troops are acting at a strategic level. Where is the army? Let me go back and tell my boss. The balloons are really tactical. All right, now, because there were balloons, I believe, at Vicksburg. You know, what are the rebels doing in the city? How much longer can they hold out? They're surveillance, but they're very different surveillances.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lee dispersed his army a bit, worked them east. He was hoping to threaten the state capital of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So the story of Gettysburg has always been that the Confederate troops entered Gettysburg looking for new shoes and bumped into a Union force. Mm-hmm. Gettysburg was a center of shoemaking in Pennsylvania, and as I said, one of Lee's objectives in the North was to visit some of the ravages of war on the North instead of his beloved Virginia. So raiding for supplies was tolerated, although Lee's orders were to make sure you paid for provisions and supplies, even if it was in Confederate dollars.
Yeah, it would have been useless up north. Like, don't give us that rebel money.
But the two armies were trying to find each other.
Probing.
And it was always Lee's intention to find a conducive location for a decisive battle with the Union Army. Mm-hmm. So the two forces weren't entirely surprised to encounter each other in Gettysburg on July 1st. They knew they were close. It would have been less of a surprise to Lee if his own cavalry commander, Jeb Stuart, wasn't distracted with raiding Union supply lines further east. In fact, the initial skirmish in Gettysburg was between Confederate infantry and the dismounted Union cavalry searching for them on the northern fringes of Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. The two commanding generals quickly consolidated their troops in and around Gettysburg. The Union was able to seize the commanding heights of the ridge south and east of town. And the action of the second day was focused on the Union trying to fortify and reinforce this position while the Confederates attempted to outflank their foes at either end of the line. They nearly succeeded, famously, at the southern end of the line, except for a heroic stand by the 20th Maine, who eventually routed the rebels with a brave bayonet countercharge.
I'm going to drop a pin.
Okay. Yes, there's a pin, and there's a reason I bring that up. But that's one of the most famous actions of U.S. military history.
Oh, yeah.
On the third day, the Confederates conducted a frontal assault on the center of the Union line in hopes of breaking the force. This is the famous Pickett's Charge. And right up front, it's less a mad dash of men across a field than it was an insanely disciplined slog across a mile or so of ground in the face of relentless cannon and musket fire.
Yeah, it was brutal.
In the aftermath, Lee conducted a strategic withdrawal and returned to Virginia. Meade, the Union commander, was unsure that he'd really seen the entire strength of Lee's army and therefore did not pursue the retreating Confederate army. On July 4th, 1863, Vicksburg fell, and the Mississippi was under Union control. This encircled the Confederate states and placed intense strategic pressure on them. Lee was never able to again consolidate sufficient forces to invade the North, and was relegated to a defensive war. Moreover, the Confederacy was unable to secure assistance from any European nations. The defeat at Gettysburg sealed the eventual defeat of the Confederates. It was only the tactical error by General Meade in not pursuing Lee that truly prolonged the war. While this is hardly an exhaustive history of the Battle of Gettysburg, there's so many stories of the battle to tell, and we're going to hear some of them, I think, in the course of the stories about the spookiness. Mm-hmm. But it does give you a sense of why Gettysburg carries emotional weight even today. Prior to the battle, the last hopes of the South were buoyed during the campaign. The battle was one of the bloodiest of the Civil War. I think it was the bloodiest of the Civil War, with some 46,000 to 51,000 combined casualties. Now, that's not all deaths, mind you.
Right.
But that included a significant loss of officers. And to put this into greater perspective, Gettysburg ranks as one of the true carnages of American military history. Even D-Day's combined Allied casualties number some 10,000. And of that, 4,414 confirmed dead. Let that weigh, because I think when we think of carnage, the modern imagination immediately goes to D-Day, and this was so much. Gettysburg was so much worse.
Yeah, D-Day was certainly a meat grinder, but by comparison, and we had referenced in a previous episode about the Revolutionary War and the number of men taking the field. Civil War eclipses it by many thousands. So these are big. Imagine a stadium, like, Raven Stadium sized number of people clashing with an equally bigger sized equally sized force,
and that's
in
also,
a field.
That's also why
it's a lot of people.
Lee's bringing the army into Pennsylvania, dispersing them, letting them range in a general direction back east, was itself an aggressive act, because all of those people needed to be fed and were feeding off the land. They're like locusts when you think about it.
Well, I mean, the Confederacy was starting to feel the pinch of the Anaconda Plan, which was starting to fence
the
them
encirclement.
in.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So after the battle,
I'm just laughing because, it's like, oh man, all those history classes start coming back. Plus, I read Michael Shar's book,
Killer Angels.
Killer Angels, yeah. Excellent version book. I think I'll put that on the media page.
Yeah, that's
an excellent
That's
book.
a good place to put that. To put that now. So after the battle, we should note the obvious misery of the remaining year of the war, the loss of friends and family, the growing recognition that Gettysburg was the South's high water mark, et cetera, et cetera. But and do you have this in front of you?
Mm-hmm,
okay, good, because I wanted Mike to read this. We'll circle back to another perspective, but perhaps this bit from William Faulkner's 1949 novel Intruder in the Dust best captures the Southern significance of Gettysburg.
For every Southern boy 14 years old, not once, but whenever he wants it, there is the instance when it's still not yet 2:00 on that July afternoon in 1863. The brigades are in position behind the rail fence. The guns are laid and ready in the woods, and the furled flags are already loosened to break out, and Pickett himself, with his long old ringlets, and his hat in one hand probably, and his sword in the other, looking up the hill, waiting for Longstreet to give the word. And it's all in the balance. It hasn't happened yet. It hasn't even begun yet. It not only hasn't begun yet, but there is still time for it not to begin against that position, and those circumstances which made more men than Garnett, and Kemper, and Armistead, and Wilcox look grave. Yet it's going to begin. We all know that. We have come too far with too much at stake, And that moment doesn't need even a 14-year-old boy to think, this time. John, we are lucky enough today to have my dear friend Bill. I've known Bill for years now. I mean, it's been since I don't know, gosh, the 2000. I mean, early 2000s, 2001, I think it was.
Apparently so. Yes.
Yes.
This is very exciting. This is very exciting because this is our first technical interview because we're talking to him over the internet.
Yeah,
we've had people in.
Yeah.
Now we're expanding our repertoire and,
Yep.
and talking to people online.
Complete
this is
with
fantastic.
technical failures. So, but no longer. And
Nope, we're there.
Without any further ado, Bill, welcome to the podcast. We're really happy to have you.
Thanks, guys. I mean, I'm very excited to be here. It's a pleasure. Been looking forward to it, and I've been listening to every episode.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah,
That's one of the two we know are out there.
yeah, that's right. In all honesty,
people on to you as well. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, we definitely appreciate that, and and having knowing you're out there is awesome as well. Because a lot of times I'm thinking about you and experiences we've had over the years, and we've had quite a few. But so as you know, we brought you into this Gettysburg episode, and we would like to share with the listeners the reasons why you are the go-to person for Gettysburg.
Yeah. Have you been to Gettysburg?
Yeah, have
Ever?
you been there?
I
Let's
mean,
start with that's a great question. Have you ever been to Gettysburg, Bill?
is that Gettysburg with one T or two?
not sure.
I mean, it's an interesting thing. History started very early. My mom read me Beowulf and Tolkien when I was 4
I
and
love
5.
you already.
So I just got the ball rolling, and I don't know why the American Civil War was my first love, first professional love, that sort of thing. Other than the fact that I found in one of the drawers in the living room one year, again very young, and it was the centennial clippings and a binder that she had created as her senior project in high school. And it had all of the old Time Life articles in it and the paintings that had been printed in the Time Life series for the centennial. Mm-hmm. And I just thought the uniforms were the coolest thing because it was very specific in the fact that it did not portray your average federal soldier and your average Confederate soldier. It showed you the eccentricities of both sides and the uniqueness of the early war uniforms. And I just thought, oh, wow.
Like the Zouaves.
Exactly.
Yeah, the French-styled
that.
uniforms with the big
guys
blouson pants.
Yeah. Fezzes and, guys with Whipple hats, which were modeled after coal miner hats that looked very similar to World War I and II German Stahlhelms. And I thought, what is
See,
that?
I can nerd out about this stuff. Have you
You
ever?
guys are really kindred spirits here. I love this.
I recently learned that was the last time the United States fielded a true Scottish unit. Don't ask me which unit it was, but that they entered the war wearing tartan trews, but that did not last long.
No,
Much like the Zouaves did not last long in the field.
Absolutely, right, and we all can see the reasons why, right? But pretty snazzy.
Yeah, sartorially
for the
excellent.
I mean, sign me up, right? So it was not long after that because being from the area that we're all originally from, it's only an hour to an hour and a half away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I went to school like 15 minutes south. I went to Gettysburg at least once a week just to eat.
Right. So it's almost in our our DNA just by
proximity.
Proximity, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we would go all the time. And then my dad was working like midnight shifts, so we couldn't really be in the house during the day when he was sleeping. So my mom had us out all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it was to Antietam, down to D.C., to other museums, and a lot of times up to Gettysburg. And from that point, it just flourished, and you start reading books, and you start digging into things, and family starts talking to you about X, Y, and Z, and somebody told me, or I was thinking this morning of something I hadn't thought about in probably quite some time. and I'm related to President Carter through a Civil War veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it's
That's
just
the
one of
first
those
time I
things
think
that,
I've heard that.
but to my point, it's just not something that I think about very often. And certainly when I was told that back in the 80s, I thought, well, who gives a rat's patoot
Right.
about President Carter? Because nothing about President Carter was at the time something to be desirous of. He was a peanut farmer.
Right.
He was a failed president, and there was all sorts of turmoil. But now looking at it 40 some years in the future, I go, well, of course, like with anyone, check your perspective.
Yeah.
Meaning you, the viewer, get your head right, check your perspective and your nuance, and remember that it's far more nuanced than what you remember it being,
Right.
and what
That's
you
right.
told.
Yeah.
And he had the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Truly.
Right.
Yes. There was a lot going on back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was, and followed on by the shining golden boy of the 80s, Reagan.
Right.
Again, check your perspective and nuance 40 years later and think about, and we now know things and we can look at things as adults, but my gosh, it was the bear versus the eagle, and that's all that mattered.
Yeah.
Us beating the dreaded commies, and President Carter didn't mean a hill of beans to me.
Right.
And also because, and I have no idea why this is, other than maybe because their uniforms were cooler in the Time Life Centennial piece, I was just far more enamored with the Southern soldiers. And you had what was the TV show that we watched as kids?
Dukes of Hazzard.
Dukes of Hazzard, right. So
General Lee. Yep.
And everything was cool about the battle flag and this, that, and the other thing. And so when someone said to me, we're related to Jimmy Carter, and I knew that my mom was from Pennsylvania, I thought, I don't care about that federal soldier that somehow was related to President Carter, right? So, but that same guy who I'm directly descended from through the Carter line was at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know you've done a lot of research too, right? To locate records and so forth.
I have. And a lot of that hasn't happened until I'd say the last 15 years, when the explosion of online resources, right? Mm-hmm. And the ability for us to do things like this, to reach out to somebody at the drop of a hat to say, hey, I need some help with something. Can you check something out for me?
Right.
This guy, he turned himself in, for lack of any better term, to federal authorities not long after the battle.
Oh, wow.
To Virginia. His very interesting life story happened from that point on. But that's just a small piece of what's interesting about Gettysburg, right? I mean, was it the battle? You'll have people argue you on both sides of it until you're blue in the face.
There's a whole Wikipedia page about what is the true turning point of the Civil War. But
right. And unless somebody throws something out of left field, I wouldn't turn anybody's argument down.
Right.
Because it's a what if. There's no right answer.
I think the first one on the page is the first Battle of Bull Run. I was like, okay.
Oh, the turning point?
That seems awfully early.
We're starting off hot.
Yeah. But you're probably right. I mean, maybe Fort Sumter? I don't know.
It did say a lot. That battle said a lot.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, so I know you've done some research, and if I recall, you would and again, you were looking at family ties. Did you say that family member that you were referencing, they turned themselves in? Do you have any details or like letters, or what do you know about that family member?
I do. I have letters for years later, post-war letters, but in the intervening period from the time that he surrendered, or was picked up, however you want to call it, he was sent to a camp not far from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
He might have rode the train out of the B&O line, right?
Yeah, it very likely could. The guys that picked him up were probably from out West Virginia way, and was probably taken back towards that way, and then shot up north towards the area of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, he meets his future wife, is my mother's father's great grandmother.
Okay.
is their daughter. Sorry. And he meets her outside of Pittsburgh. And at some point in time thereafter, we're talking still during the war, he joins a local federal heavy artillery battery.
Really?
So he galvanizes, as they called it at the time. So he takes off his Confederate cap and puts on his blue cap.
Puts on the blue cap to just adapt.
Any idea if there was a philosophical shift? What made this change? If there was
I don't have any idea, unfortunately.
Okay.
Of course, that begs the question of what was the reason? Was it his future wife? Was it survival? Right. The family had moved from Georgia, hence the Carter piece, to Alabama. And when the war broke out, they were in Alabama, and he had enlisted across the river in Mississippi.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I don't know why Mississippi, unless maybe he was attending school there. I've seen some enlistment paperwork that says he was a student, but also that he was a cobbler. So, he obviously he was not tied down to one place. Let's put it that way, and that serves him throughout his entire life.
That might have made it easier for him to make that shift in a sense, because so many of this. I have a really good friend who's from Alabama, and he can trace all sides of his family back through the Civil War, and all of his Civil War veteran stories from his family are very much tied to the fact that they were Alabama. They were Southern. They didn't give like you said, a rat's whatever about the politics so much as this is my home, this is my state, and that national identity of I'm an American first hadn't really clicked.
Yeah,
but they
that was secondary.
Yeah, the big issues of the day about abolition didn't matter one way or the other. In fact, it sounds like all of my friends' family were dirt poor and could not own a slave.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, and then that also goes to the reasons why each person had their own reason why. And, I as going back to our previous discussion off air of getting older, right? The older I've gotten, the less judgmental I've become to history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, I think about it and I go, and come to find out of what this fellow did, He abandons his family multiple times. He abandons his comrades, right? So he surrenders and after the Battle of Gettysburg, leaving his comrades, right? He never goes back to Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia ever, to my knowledge. He ends up back down in the South. He ends up in Texas, but he leaves his first wife and children back in Pennsylvania, never to be seen or heard from again.
Now, these are significant times. I mean, we talk about a battle and we almost conceptualize it as just blobs of blue and gray moving across a map. But the other part of us also knows as historians and those interested in history that the true horror of it will change minds. When you see people hurtling themselves against each other and stabbing each other and killing each other and really just obliterating each other in some respects, it can change your mind. And you, you said the word galvanized as a contemporary term in the day, right? He got a hold of himself or saw a different view, right? I mean, and so to your point of being a little kinder in retrospect, even for Carter or this person that, is a turncoat by definition, you're like, well, what did he see? You know what I mean? Did he see freed people in the North and said, you know what? I've never really thought of it this way at all. Because you could see massively diametrically opposed. You could be in the South and see something completely different than what you're going to experience in the North. So I agree with you, Bill. And, I think we have to keep our open mind, which is one of the things we say on the show.
Yeah,
or at least I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeps telling me my mind's closed.
I'm
skeptical.
Well, the good news is I was once a massive skeptic and then I got better. But John is, still has the sniffles.
I like my science.
Well, but you assume that you have to abandon your science, and that's wrong too, and which means the nuance is a little bit lost. But anyway, back to Gettysburg. You ended up being a reenactor, Bill. How can you tell us how that started?
Yeah. So in high school, I had joined the history club. Right, was one of the few clubs that was interesting to me, and we were wargaming, 15 millimeter Civil War, and one of the guys that came in was a teacher from another school, which happened to be the school my mom taught in or taught at, and through time, he's talking to my mom. Oh, I met your son, et cetera, et cetera, and by hook or by crook through conversation, it was, obviously, Bill's very much into the Civil War, and this colleague of my mom says, oh, well, I'm a reenactor, and you can see the progression of the conversation. So
Sure.
then it gets back to myself and a buddy, and meanwhile, there was another guy in the miniature group, the history group, that he was also a reenactor, and another guy had gone and joined up with him from the same crew, and so we all kind of started reenacting at the same time. This is back in 1990 during the 125th anniversary cycle.
Yep.
And it just kind of fell out from there. And in that case, that really opened the door to what in the hobby they call stitch counters.
Yes.
If you wanted to become a stitch counter and really get into the nuance. Yeah, absolutely. And what is right and what is wrong, because one, I want to look right. Two, I'm out there portraying this in front of the public, and I'm doing a disservice if I'm not doing it the right way, because then I'm teaching people the wrong thing. If that's the case, then why am I even doing this other than just to go out, have a smoke and have a drink or something? I don't know. Right. So, if you're not doing it for the right reasons and in educational purposes, then, maybe reevaluate why you're there.
Well, and I think it's interesting, and it's not lost on me, Bill, that one of the things that drew you in the first place was depictions of uniforms that were not just your blue, gray, right, and just the generic sort of scribblings one could draw, but no, this is, this rebel has got, he took nuts off the ground and squashed them open to get the butternut, fabric color, by dipping his tunic in this water, and he's trying to match the gray uniform of his fledgling nation. That reality of putting these uniforms together. That really, they didn't have the resources to do it in a fashion like the Union did, right? Where they were a little bit more. A little bit more
in period
homogenous
the production. Yeah, absolutely. The production of uniforms in the South was like a roller coaster.
Yeah,
and it ebbed and swelled depending on the time during the war and what they were getting in from England,
or
got past the blockade,
or the raiders could bring in
exactly. And you end up learning all these things and going, my goodness. It was not as generalized and carte blanche as we learn in school, because of course in primary schools you can't get into that level of detail. That's university, right? When you can get into the specifics of certain things, and I got into a very, very detailed level of firearms knowledge, and ended up with my own collection of original firearms and things, and really just kind of sunk my teeth into this. And I look back on it and go, wow, that was, that's quite a bit.
So, so what have you, who have you portrayed? Have you stuck with a particular side or unit, or have you been both? And what have you done over the years?
Galvanized.
Okay. Yeah. Good
but
callback.
I had, as another friend said, I had Oprah's closet of, cornucopia of possibilities of gear that I could use.
So much so that you could outfit your friend who was going to join you that day. Remember, we went up and ate turnips and watched a battle.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I probably could have outfitted 6 or 7 more of us.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where you just start acquiring stuff and acquiring more things and sewing your own. And, it wasn't like a solo obsession. It was what a lot of us did or do in just the chase of information,
Yeah.
right? Learning new things, trying new techniques, whether it's a new sewing technique or a new pattern or whatever the case is, to say, oh, this is how it was back then, and really trying to put yourself in those shoes to see what it was like. And you go, man, I'm no tailor, I'm no seamstress. Next, and then you move on to the next thing to see if maybe that's something interesting, right? But yeah, what a tour de force in hands-on learning.
Yeah. Well, I was always amazed at the camps, where you really could dig in, right? Like I'm, bringing implements forward. This is how they cooked. This is how they prepared meals. This is, what they even ate with. I mean, every detail is just really impressive. And, I like the idea that if you're going to teach this and you've got people watching, right, you don't want to give them the wrong impression. It's so easy to lose sight of what it was really like.
There was an old, it was an Italian pasta sauce commercial. It was "Taste the difference authenticity makes." And I always thought that was profound, because I flipped it a little bit and I said, "Be the difference authenticity makes," something to that effect, or "See the difference authenticity makes." In the same vein of, well, again, you're going to see that, you're going to literally see and hear the differences in the guys who are just buying stuff off the Sears rack, right, and going out there unprepared in so many different ways, to the guys who go out there prepared, from soup to nuts, to put out the best portrayal that we're able to do. I mean, we can't do it.
It's a commitment thing. The person who's put that kind of level of effort into crafting their kit, their uniform and kit, has had to, by necessity, put themselves in the place of the person in some capacity. Either why did this model I'm following do it this way, or why would I want my kit in a certain way for my own comfort because I have been in the field? And that's the commitment that brings forth the authenticity you're talking about.
Absolutely.
I might have tried this once or twice myself in some other capacities. I'm just saying.
Okay.
Just not Civil War.
What? I'm shocked. Yeah, John's got some kit. I've got some variety.
Yeah.
It's an offline conversation.
Yeah. Well, there's other unknown topics we could pull that into.
Sure. There were guys that I knew, and I've done some long marches, but not one like this, which I always wanted to do. And it's not, it's still possible, I suppose, but they would do Orange County, Virginia to Gettysburg.
Oh, okay.
In all essence, recreating the march of a certain regiment or brigade or something. And the stories of them tossing things, to your point, John, tossing things, just tossing food, because they weren't hungry, they were more thirsty. And even if they were thirsty, they weren't as thirsty as they were before, because everything was focused on just moving forward. So even their thirst was satiated in a way. And they were just throwing everything out. And
yet even that is authentic. That there are accounts of that happening over in military history for centuries, that the moving unit just decides that we're discarding all the crap we thought we needed but don't.
Yep. And then
as you adapt to it,
for the next time it happens, well, I didn't need that, so I'm not even going to start with this. Yeah. Right. And so then that gets down to that lean, mean, marching and fighting, per individual, who at the Battle of First, Manassas was, bedecked in all sorts of glory and glamour, and thought he needed, his portable whatever with him.
Right.
And in fact, it was an encumbrance that just, wasn't necessary.
Yeah, you have the camp followers and bringing whatever they, brought along, and to sort of make sure that they didn't, suffer in the field. But speaking of authenticity, just to pivot over to another aspect that we could probably investigate, I recall, I myself was there, but I know you were there at the filming of Gettysburg, and I'm going to blank.
Were you in the movie?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right. You're I'm going to have to add you to the list of people I know who are in the movie.
Yeah, a lot.
Because that's when I was in school. Was they were filming Gettysburg
right.
while I was at Mount St. Mary's in the early
Yeah.
90s. We went
When
up
I
to
was in
Gettysburg and
college,
watched the movie there.
We had had an acquaintance at college that was a reenactor and went up, and they dragged, because of his kit that he showed up with, they dragged him. Speaking
Yeah,
of
they did that
authenticity,
a
he
lot.
was another guy that really knew what he was doing and had kit. So when they saw him, they're like, "We're getting you in the live action shots right now." Where they took me, and they're like, "Throw this on, walk through that trailer, put all that crap on. We're gonna drill you and put you, as background dressing in some scenes," which was fine because I was just there for the experience, and that was a hell of an experience. But Bill, do you want to walk through? I know there's probably numerous stories you could pull through from the actors to interactions you had there. Anything popped to mind? I see you're smiling.
Yeah.
For the listener, we did have a Zoom call put together.
Yeah. I was up there for 3 weeks, and just like your buddy, I got yanked early on to be part of what was called the core group, and we were behind one of the main actors, Richard Jordan,
And he was
who
playing
played
Armistead.
Pickett.
Oh, Pickett. That's right.
Sorry, Armistead.
Armistead.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Armistead. And wherever he was on screen, we were behind him. In I'd say 75% of the cases, and it was one of the best times of my life. I've still got friends that I met there who have gone out and their life has been Civil War since then.
Oh wow. Life changing.
Yeah, it was absolutely life changing, and it was one of those times that I was only up there for 3 weeks because this fall semester was starting shortly thereafter, and I came home and told my parents about what a wonderful time this was, and it was life changing, and they looked at me and they said, "Well, if we had known, we would have told you to skip the semester," and I kid you not, I don't think I've ever been more angry in my entire life. Like, it was too late. I couldn't go back up because things had gone right. I had already paid for school. Right. And I thought, what is inconceivable? My parents, that was never thought. Like, I never thought they would say, "Oh, don't go to school. Everything's fine."
Yeah, go back up and shoot a movie.
Like, what? and it was very bohemian fun lifestyle for I was what? It was 90. This is 92. So I was 19. Mm-hmm. Super cool bohemian lifestyle. We were living in Boy Scout cabins. We were living in our tents. We were getting paid cash. We were getting fed king crab legs.
My gosh.
We had Yingling beer. There was no one checking IDs. This was like high. This was high heaven for a 19-year-old and his buddies. New buddies, of course, right? So that's a whole new thing too, a whole new dynamic. And I do remember one very bizarre incident involving Stephen Lang, he did play Pickett, who's gone on to do many, many things, Avatar and, whatever. And I had come back, my family was going down to Myrtle Beach for a family weekend or vacation. And the cast party was that same night that I was going to be away. And, I didn't want to miss the cast party because, hey, that sounds like could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's the cap of all the fun you've had.
Right. But I also didn't want to miss saying goodbye to my family because now, again, we're talking 92 and it's not like I could pick up the phone, cell phone. So I drove back home and immediately turned back around and came back up to Gettysburg. Well, I went to go park my car on the lot where filming was and the camp was. And they had a chain stretched across it. And I'm thinking, well, that's the end of that. I don't know where I'm going to go. So I went back into town and pulled into the McDonald's parking lot. And of course, you're not supposed to be there after hours. But I thought, well, worst comes to worst, I have a good excuse. I have all my passes with me. So, if the cop wants to help me out, maybe he'll help me out. So I just cranked the seat back and threw a blanket over myself, went to sleep. And at some point in time, this must have been like 2 a.m. I shot up like a dart, and I looked over. I'm just looking around, thinking maybe I shot up because I remembered where I was. I'm exposed in this parking lot, and I see this Confederate general meandering up the sidewalk as if he is like swatting at non-existent gnats around him. His
I think I remember this
his
story.
arms are moving in these drunken fashion, and he's kind of like on the balls of his feet, and he's careening this way and that way, and he's going up the Emmitsburg Road towards the battle, towards Pickett's charge for intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And the irony is
He's getting into character.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Or he's been possessed.
Well, there's more even to that too.
Okay.
Him getting into character, but he's near Pickett's buffet. So
Right.
It's all
So they
running,
charged him too
running.
much. You're welcome. That
Yeah.
was
And I looked around like, does anybody else see this? And I'm like, well, no, of course not. No one else sees this. It's 2:00 in the morning in the middle of the McDee's parking lot, and no one sees Stephen Lang like noodling his way up to the area of fate. And I'm thinking, and I was like, no one's gonna believe this. And I just put my blanket back over my head and went back to sleep again. And I told the guys the next morning what had happened, and they looked at me and they started laughing, and they were like, "Oof, you should have seen him last night at the cast party."
Oh no!
They said he was in character all night long, and he was absolutely sloshed. And someone was singing a song that had some derision of Lincoln in it, and Lang went up to the person and spun them around and dressed them down as Pickett, saying, "Don't you dare speak ill of the President of the United
He's
States."
a method actor, man.
Wow.
XYZ.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, and most people, I think, until recently thought this too, but I think there's some research that came out that Lincoln did not put Pickett's name forward for appointment to West Point.
Okay.
Specifically. There is some tangential tie there. It may have been with the law firm that he was associated with, but then, of course, history takes it and go, oh, it was Lincoln himself.
Oh, dear.
But the point is that Stephen Lang had been told or had read that it was Lincoln who put Pickett forward to West Point. And so as Pickett, he was defending Lincoln.
Wow, interesting.
Well, you're talking about nuance there too.
Before we let's take a pause because it's a good time for a break. We have to switch over.
Okay.
A little technical background stuff, but we'll be back, gang. We'll be back with Bill Bosworth and these awesome stories from Gettysburg, and we've talked about movies and more to come. We'll be right back. Hey, gang, we're back. We're back with Bill Bosworth. Thanks. We took a quick break. John, you were talking about something really funny. You want to keep going with your thoughts?
Yeah, well, so there are a couple of good stories about us going to the Lincoln Diner that are associated with this topic, but the one that's relevant here is that my college group would go in, like, we try to get to the Lincoln Diner in downtown Gettysburg at like midnight when we went. And while they were filming Gettysburg, we'd run into a number of the actors, but particularly Tom Berenger, who was playing Longstreet, would be there a lot in his uniform, in character, more or less. And as we would go to our table, we'd kind of give him a wave because we saw him that often. And he'd wave back.
General?
Yeah, exactly.
Steak and eggs again, I see.
Yeah, but it was interesting how integrated that cast became and how invested they were and their search for authenticity, to circle back to something you were saying. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to say about your comments about portraying Pickett and defending Lincoln and your comments earlier about nuance and history is something that's often forgotten, is just how complicated feelings among the officers and men were about the two countries. They had served, so many of them had served as officers of the United States Army and were fighting their friends and classmates. And of course, across both sides. Something else I'd learned recently that just kind of surprised me, although maybe it shouldn't, is that when the South surrendered, one of the first things Lincoln did was order the band to play Dixie at the White House. Mm-hmm. There was despite all the carnage, there was still a great deal of respect and personal feelings across this divide. And that's also, I think, sometimes lost, particularly these days when the commentary, the history gets tied up with current events and redefinition and
Yeah. Well, it's a gesture to reduce that polarization, which was so important at
that
the
was
time.
the point. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. He was going to say we're going to treat them with the respect and play Dixie.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and lessons from ages ago, could apply today. But all right, so I mean, we've covered some interesting territory, and I think one that I have a question about, Bill, and I kind of know, but I want to drag us over to the battlefield itself because I understand you had some experiences there. But what folks may not know also is when you were shooting the movie, they didn't allow you to shoot on the battlefield, right? I mean, it's hallowed ground. Or help me understand the treatment of the ground itself, because it's, folks may not know that, and that's very interesting how we treat it.
Yeah. So, it's, and, I'm over here in Germany, right? And so I went looking for battlefields, like I would go looking for battlefields in the US, right?
Surprise.
Forgetting the temporary insanity of the lack of space. There, there's no, well, we'll just spread out here.
Yeah.
So for example, I'm in Stuttgart, and Ulm is not far from me. And Napoleon bagged, for lack of a better term, or a good armchair historian term, bagged about 60,000 Austrians around Ulm. In the Napoleon, I think it was 1808. And it was, and you think about that and you go, 60,000? That's insane. So I was down in Ulm and I thought, well, let me go see the expanse of the Battle of Ulm.
Right.
Right. The Battle of Ulm is the city of Ulm. And the city of Ulm has not stayed this big. It's now this large city in southern Germany. So,
right.
And then I thought, yes, well done. Perspective.
Yeah.
It's different here.
Yeah.
Other than say Waterloo, right? Or some areas maybe in France, things aren't like they are in the U.S. And we treat our battlefields differently because we can.
Yeah, we can.
Again, short of Waterloo, which is the penultimate, end all be all of the reign of the beast, Napoleon, as the rest of Europe saw him, and we need to recognize that. The rest of the battlefields carried on as whatever they were, right, or became something that modernity couldn't stop.
Yeah,
or it couldn't stop modernity. So, and technology, and when we created these national parks, we tucked them away, never to be used as anything else again. In whether it be for natural beauty or in recognition of our own people. And we did go on the battlefield a number of times to do filming. One was on the Slider Farm, if I recall. Yes, I'm pretty sure that was the name of it. It's an area that's not very often visited by visitors, and I had never been there before until that point. But because of that, it didn't necessitate parking lots and permanent trash cans and things that other parts of the park have necessitated due to visitation.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of monumentation there, so there wasn't a lot of disguising that needed to be done.
Okay.
Interesting, right.
And in the movie, when you see them kind of hunched over a map underneath a fly tent several times, that's the Slider Farm. And it was, for lack of any better term, it was pretty magical, because if you could block out the cameras and people in jeans and things, but they were kind of behind you, you looked around and there wasn't anything else there. But I think the big round top is in the background, and man, it was great. So using that part of the battlefield, they bust us in, I think, for a few days early in the morning from the camping area. That was one. And then
but that was an actual part of the battlefield.
Yes.
In the day. Interesting.
So, question: I know that the park does not encompass the entirety of the battlefield. So, is this part of the park?
Yes,
Okay,
it is part of the National Battlefield Park.
right.
And it was even back in
Okay.
the early
Yeah, because
90s.
they've been buying up more land where they can.
Right, right.
That's
And,
right.
and like I,
The distinction there is that it's part of the park, but it wasn't battle did not occur there. Is that what we're saying?
No,
no, it did.
yeah,
It did.
yeah,
Okay.
it did.
It did.
No,
Troops moved back and forth. It's just not a part of the park that people go to.
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
okay. No, what I was
Because
saying about I'm sorry, for clarity's sake, the the part because what Bill was saying earlier about how life goes on. When they did establish the park, they weren't able to establish the park over the entirety of the battlefield. Where
Oh
the
yeah,
troops
because
moved.
after the people
Yeah.
would purchase parts of the
Yeah, and
battlefield,
they
and then it would be reacquired.
Right.
No, I understand that.
So they
part.
have been trying to buy back as much land
Yeah.
as possible, but of course that would also include downtown Gettysburg. And
Oh, okay.
yeah,
well,
nobody's going to sell that.
I was just thinking there was a distinction between we're calling this where the battle occurred, but then we're also buying land just to give some easement. And then and to your point, right? There's no room. Like you couldn't set aside all the battlefields in Europe because you wouldn't have anywhere to live. You'd be living in bunkers and you'd be living
Yeah,
on battlefields. I mean,
Absolutely.
which is what
I mean-
what is the case. You got to go into the coffee shop to read the placard. It's like
There are sections. My understanding is there are sections of some battlefields, like you can still visit the remains of some World War I trenches, and I know
Sure.
some
Absolutely.
people I've been friends with have gone and found where the unit they were attached to now was in World War II, and they've been able to use the maps. But yeah, it's still all
but it could
working.
be like an apartment building.
Right,
I mean,
right.
potentially. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and again, because Europe is Europe, cities are fortified,
Yeah,
and the city becomes the battleground.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we also had that in the U.S. too, but not anywhere even sniffing to that degree. Right. Washington D.C. and Baltimore gets defended in McHenry, et cetera, et cetera. But these cities are literally ringed with fortification. To your point of getting rid of or buying back parts of the battlefield, go back to the Pickett's Buffet. I think that was recently sold or bought and has been torn down or is going to be.
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't
But
been.
that whole area, short of, and here's the funny thing.
That's Steinwehr.
That's yeah, I guess going out to Emmitsburg Road, right? Everything up until it gets to the big fast foods,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're not tearing down McDonald's. They're not
Right.
tearing down,
Yeah.
You
you know,
couldn't
this, that, or
and
the
serve
other
the
thing.
tourists.
right?
Yeah.
Because you just can't get past that blockage.
Yeah.
Although
But
they
you
did
can
get
go
rid of the
past
tower.
Pickett's Buffet. Oh,
well,
that
that's an eyesore.
Yeah, it was an
So
eyesore.
for the listener, what we're talking about is, as the town grew up through the ages, right, different businesses owned outright, very legally parts of the battlefield that in hindsight, we would look back and say, hey, it'd probably be better if we would just reclaim that. And we're talking about restaurants that are built on the battle site that are like a buffet, a McDonald's, a coffee shop, and some places are trying to be, catering to the history itself, but others are just frankly businesses that serve food, period. So that's what we're talking about here, just for folks that aren't familiar or haven't been to Gettysburg. There's a downside to it, right, that's butted up against, modern stores that we go to and restaurants. But there still are. But there's a large protection. You can't just wander onto the battlefield with a metal detector. What you do there is very restricted. But there are some stories, and I know John has a few. But Bill, I think maybe there's some where you guys have been were on the battlefield, and I think there was a lot of enforcement, right? If I'm recalling a story. And
Don't incriminate yourself.
Yeah, well, you were telling me that there's a statute of limitations on certain things.
Some things.
But I think there was with the story that we were talking about over text when I first knew we were doing a Gettysburg. There was an encounter you had with an individual. Is that?
Yeah.
Can you remind us of that? Remind me of that story.
So this was probably, I guess 94, 95, June, July. I was thinking about the details the other day, and we were doing our annual living history in Pitzer's Woods. Now, Pitzer's Woods is on the Confederate side of the battlefield, and it's down. It's along Confederate Avenue for those who know, and it's down towards one of the fire towers, if you will, Ranger Tower. They call it the Longstreet Tower, I think, because it's down towards that end of what would have been the Second Day's Battle, across from the Peach Orchard.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
basically
I've got it up on a map.
That's the
that I'm running
rebel
at the same
right
time.
flank, I think.
Yeah.
And we were doing living history in the battlefield, and we found ourselves one morning on Little Round Top, and I stirred, and it was, I don't know, maybe 7 of us, and the guy who was in, this individual, Mike, name's Doug. And I stirred, and I rolled over and was wondering where the person, where Doug was, who was next to me, and everybody else was down in the line. And we had a really just miserable night of sleep. There had been a hedgehog that had realized that we were in its path, its midnight saunter, and was, not very happy with us, and woke all of us up, freaked us all out, because there was just this grunting and snorting in the middle of the night on the battlefield, which, of course, your mind's already racing with possibilities. And I look up, and there is Doug with a cigar in his mouth, sitting up against the Warren statue on Little Round Top, and he's just sitting there. And I felt like I was in the movie Predator.
Nice.
I said,
excellent reference.
yeah.
There you go, Jeff.
Anytime we can reference Predator, I'm happy.
Yeah. I said, what are you doing up there? What are you looking at? Like, it's kind of weird. And he goes, look. I'm like, oh, what?
Knowing Doug, that is so Doug.
He's like, just listen. And I'm like, okay. And I'm listening, and I start to hear these Indian whoops. American Indian, what I would just call them, Indian whoops and chanting, and maybe war cries or something. I've been to the park more times than I can count in in 3 lifetimes or something to that, right? Just been to the park so many times. Never heard that. I mean, you talk about being freaked out because of what you know and expect. Now, interlude very quickly, there's always been talk about there having been an American Indian battle in the area of Devil's Den, right?
Yes,
now,
interesting.
I've looked into that throughout the years in varying degrees of interest, and I've never found anything concrete.
No.
Right?
Interesting.
But the rumor's there.
Of course, the rumor's there, and that means the rumor will never go away because of what it's associated with. But when someone finds Indian artifacts, they assume that there must have been a settlement or a battle. Right? It can't be anything else.
Yeah. Like
Right?
a hunter's stopover or something.
It can't be that.
Yeah, that's too mundane.
Right.
Too boring.
Right? It can't be that. Or it couldn't be that, like, the hunters were shooting arrows and they're going on a flat trajectory. They're not going in from an arc, which means they're sticking out of the ground point down. Well, if they're going on a flat trajectory, you're probably going to lose it. Right? And so you have arrows that maybe, you might find like 3 or 4 arrows in a close proximity. Oh my goodness, 3 or 4 arrows in a close. That must mean there was
a massacre.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's how things happen, right? This is how rumors and things grow. And so we all start hearing this, the 7 of us or so, and someone says, "Oh, remember that we heard there was an Indian battle up here." And I thought, "Oh boy, what is going on?" Now we've doubled down on battles. Like, we've got a battle on top of a battle. And there is an Indian somewhere out in front of us, across the valley, next to Devil's Den in the woods, and you can hear him. And now we're all, the hair on the back of our neck is just as straight as it can be. And it's changing location without seeing it. We have no idea. We don't see a body. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything other than these whoops and hollers coming from different directions. And of course, somebody says, "What do we do if it gets closer?" And we're like, "Oh, I don't know. What do we do if it gets closer? We don't see anything. So what are you supposed to react to?"
Wow.
You know, and then, as if it was a Python sketch, this guy, let's just say the last time we heard the noise was over to our right. Well, this guy ambles out straight across from us, across the valley, probably 200 yards from where the last noise was, and he's got like a puffy vest on and wellies and like jeans, and he's just tromping through the woods. And then we hear the noise, and it's coming from him.
Mm.
And then he steps back into the woods, and we don't see him anymore. And like, as if he's disappeared. And then the noise comes from somewhere else. So now we know, in theory, the visual of who's done this.
Yeah.
Right. But it's still bizarre because he's popping in and out of the woods. We can't see him. And then the last time he pops out of the woods, a minivan comes by. And this is not hyperbole. The minivan doesn't stop, and he disappears as if he dove into the minivan. I cannot, and I never will to this day be able to figure out what it was, because we're watching this guy like a hawk. He's the only other person there this early in the morning, and the minivan didn't stop to open the door, let him get in, buckle up, slide the door closed. Yeah. No, it was just going, and all of a sudden it passes him and he's gone.
Oh my God.
Seemingly in the van. But I mean, and not to say that this was like supernatural or anything, but it just added to the level of bizarro of that morning, and the reference to the Predator movie, what's got Billy so spooked, and there's
trees.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just sitting there tooting on his cigar.
Yeah.
Just watch,
Believe,
look over
just
there,
watch.
listen. And it was surreal.
Doug doesn't have any Indian blood in him, does he? Did he?
I mean, flaming red-haired Indians. Maybe I don't know.
There were.
Perhaps.
Yeah, there were. That is a fascinating story. It's interesting to hear you tell it again, and just how strange it was. But I'll quickly share a quick little synchronicity, or just sort of this connective tissue to another story we're telling in another little recording we have. My son Jake is he's now 30. Talk about having old kids, Bill.
I find that hard to believe, but yeah,
he'll be 30. He'll be 30 next month. But he had a story when he was a teenager. Went up and maybe I shouldn't give it away, but. It doesn't matter. He was going to scare some girls that he was with. They were visiting, and he was on Wainwright, which is right down that, on the Hook side of the Union right. And they were walking down, and he went into a wooded area, and he was going to whoop. And I used the same word that you did. He said, I was just going to whoop, make a whoop noise and scare the girls. But then he ended up having an experience, which I'll hold back because that's his story. But we started questioning these whoops. Were you hearing this guy that was odd, to say the least, bizarre, paranormal, I don't know, whatever you were experiencing, it was weird. Or were you hearing the rebel yell, which... has been described, and hearing the Smithsonian's recordings of the veterans giving it very much has that whooping cry, and I don't know this for a fact. I don't want to call it a fact, but I think that the rebel yell was indeed influenced by the natives, and so the indigenous. So I find that I find it all very interesting that all of these collide in the way that they do. And again, to just reference Jake's story real quick, the question was this, was he stirring up spirits because it was, yelling out loud in the middle of the night,
I see. I
disservice to the soldiers, or was it, were they reacting to like, oh my God, somebody got in the line? He's crossed the line. You know what I'm saying?
Now, in Bill's case, it briefly crossed my mind that this might have been an early Bigfoot hunter out there trying to.
Whoop, man. Well,
And maybe the Bigfoot was.
any tree knocks,
Yeah,
Bill?
the Albatwitch was. Was responding.
You guys didn't get hit by any apple cores, did you?
No, nothing. No wampum. No.
Nothing.
We didn't get hit with any.
So Devil's
Flying tomahawks or something.
Devil's Den is notorious for hauntings. It's also the other.
It's a pile of boulders, isn't it, John?
It's a pile of boulders. Yes, Mike. It's also got a story that the reason it's called Devil's Den is that in indigenous times there was a devil there. There was a large snake. So it's kind of funny when Bill said python.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that the
Have you heard
native
that, Bill?
tribes. He was nodding. Go ahead.
I actually heard that. Very funny that we're talking about it. I saw something 2 days ago about that. About this
Synchronicity.
python that had found. It was 12 feet long.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Shedded skin that was 10 feet and things like that. And of course, the devil's the snake, and
Right.
and so. And there are a lot of snakes found there because, of course, it's a perfect place for a snake.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so it's not hard to imagine somebody somewhere along the line, whether they're indigenous or Yankee, saying, "Don't go play in Devil's Den, kids, because the giant snake will get you."
Yeah.
The other interesting thing to point out about Devil's Den is cryptozoologist, Fortean researcher Lauren Coleman many years ago came up with a listing of places across the United States that have some variation of devil in the name that are then associated with these kinds of paranormal stories and
Interesting.
happenings.
Yeah.
And his question that lingers, because it's a decades-old theory, is what came first, the name,
Right.
or the events?
This reminds me of the Michael and Mary line that runs through, from Cornwall all the way out to London. The ley line that has the different ley lines, and then the names that are coincident. And there's one that cuts from Great Britain all the way through to the Holy Land that has the name of Saint Michael, and all the, across the continent in a straight line as the crow flies. There's these conjunctions of the ley lines have these temples or a church or some holy site there that have the name, a similar name.
Yep.
That is fascinating. I did not know that, and that is so cool.
Yeah.
So for the listener, too, the Devil's Den was a popular place for the snipes to sit and pick off the soldiers on Little Round Top. So if you're ever looking at a map, you can see that Devil's Den is a great place where the rebels would hide amongst the rocks and then shoot up onto the heights where the Union were. So awesome. I thank you for sharing that story. It's really, I just find it fascinating.
That's a good story because it can go in so many
story.
directions.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I love
God.
that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all over the place. I love it.
It maxes out the what the heck level, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
High strangeness. Yes.
very much, right? And no matter if you're a believer of ghosts or spirits or anything, a concentrated level of death and maiming in such a small area.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anywhere that there would be something paranormal, perhaps, right? It would be somewhere like that. You would posit.
Yeah.
It would be a battlefield of that magnitude.
Yeah.
Or, a World War I battle.
Mm-hmm.
Just the level of carnage. If there was anywhere on Earth, it would be something like a place like that,
Yeah.
right? Where that, again, describe it however you want, where the veil is thin or, spirits linger or whatever the case is,
Yeah, you say the veil is thin. Or it could be the case, and this is a saying that comes out of I be careful how I phrase it, but the modern spirituality and the current thinkers over the years would say it is emotion that pokes holes through the fabric of reality. It's strong emotion. And so you say, well, the veil is thin there. Or is it that the veil has become thin there through emotion, through strong emotion poking holes, leaving residue, leaving such an etching in the fabric of reality. And so when you have these, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if what you saw was some strange egregore mixture of right, a guy in a weird getup
Yep.
making Indian whooping noises, which is akin to the rebel yell out in the fog on the battlefield for you guys to witness, right? And what part did you guys play in generating that, right? And I know I've gone way off the deep end, but this is really where the paranormal goes, as you know. So awesome.
Well, and you know, if we had the answers, we wouldn't be positing the questions.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so because we don't know, you kind of have to, the edges of the questions don't stop.
Yeah.
Right. You know, when do you stop asking, or when do you stop wondering and coming up with possibilities to explain something? Because I mean, it's just human nature to want an answer to something.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, so yeah.
So we, you know, we are also covering Ellicott City as well. So you know, we could, you know, we're going to do a part 2, and so you know, if there's any stories that you have in your back pocket that happened to you in Ellicott City, we can bring you back for part 2 of that one. You know, because I know we're talking about, you know, Bill, just if you don't mind being a regular that, you know, come and join the show and talk to us and, you know, get your opinion on different topics.
Happy to hang out whenever you call me, guys.
Yeah.
He could be our European correspondent.
That's right. Well, I mean, so yeah, if you like wander through, you know,
this is Bill from Deutsche Welle calling.
Thank you.
Yeah, our man in the
Bill.
field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, absolutely. If you run across stories over there talking to people, I mean, you know, Europe is haunted. Pretty sure.
Pretty
sure we can say there's a lot happening over there. If you run across cool stories, certainly let us know. Bill, are there any other stories of Gettysburg that, you know, maybe not ones that you've been a part of, but you know, through, you know, maybe has Doug experienced things on his own, or any of the other characters that, I mean, and I call them characters, and I'm sure there are any that you've heard, because we're getting that 10-minute warning here. So
yeah, there was one that I found that was interesting. A buddy of mine, Ed, had told me years ago. He was in the area, would be just east of East Cemetery Hill. And after the first day's action, the Iron Brigade, the famous, as they called them, the famous black hats, they had the field dress. They were known for their field dress, maybe 1840 field dress hat. I forget the year, the model year, but that's what they were well known for. And, you know, some of them probably had it in the Battle of Gettysburg, but one of those accoutrement of their uniform that had gone away, but that's what they were always recognized as, the black hats. And he was in that part, on that part of the battlefield around dusk, just when shadows were really, it was either obvious that it was a shadow or it wasn't, because there was no extraneous light hitting things.
yeah,
it was all or nothing. And he was talking to this gal that he had been walking around the battlefield with, and she was facing him, and he was facing what were Iron Brigade, or, you know, the Black Hat trenches that they had dug after the first day's battle. And she's talking to him, and, you know, whatever, and he just stops talking to her, and she says, "What's wrong?" And he doesn't say anything because he's afraid to move. And she turns around, and they both said they saw soldiers. It looked to them like soldiers, and it was like a parade of them just walking in front of them. These black masses of troops, as if they were in a march column or something, marching from right to left down this trench in that area.
Kind of like shadow people, right?
Exactly, like shadow people. And that's why he said it wasn't it wasn't an outside source creating this. There wasn't
Mm-hmm.
anything else around to create. There was no external light
Mm-hmm.
creating a moving shadow that was moving from right to left over and over and over and over again with distinct individual figures.
Right. Right.
Um, and he said it lasted for however long it lasted, and they both were completely silent and weren't moving
Oh my
because
God. Yeah.
they were in a moment and they didn't, one, they weren't sure what to do, and two, they didn't want to do anything that would stop it.
Right.
It's one of those things where you get into that moment and you're like, even if you want something like that to happen, what are you gonna do?
Right.
Like,
right.
you're not prepared for something so unusual. So they just kind of froze and let it do its thing. And for however long it did it. Yeah, I always found that to be very interesting because it's an area in the battlefield that people don't talk about,
Mm.
that they've seen things. It's,
Mm.
John, going back to what you said, it's Devil's Den,
Mm-hmm.
or it's the photogenic soldier at Little Round Top who goes up and asks to be in your picture.
Right.
Mm.
I might not be getting that completely accurate, but there's something about a spirit on Little Round Top that's always in pictures.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, um,
That's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So that area it always sticks with me because that's an area that people don't talk about when it comes to the paranormal. Or
Is that
yeah,
around Culp's Hill? Is that where it is? Where
it's
they
on the
were?
east side of Cemetery Hill. So when you're going up the Baltimore Pike,
Yeah.
you're coming into town,
Yeah.
and you're on the top of Cemetery Hill, and the cemetery is to your left,
Yeah.
and the lunettes are on your right. The guns are spread out.
Right.
It's down that side of the hill,
Okay. Interesting.
going towards Culp's Hill. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Is there any, you say people don't talk about that? Is it just because it's not a key part of the battle and it didn't see a lot? Or, I mean, what was the
I don't.
thought behind
I
that?
think people don't talk about it as in you don't hear about experiences there. I guess.
Oh, I see.
I would say that it's a frequented part of the park, but when I think of frequented part of the parks, I think of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think of Pickett's Charge. I think
Mm-hmm.
of Little
Yeah.
Round
The
Top.
angle.
I think of Devil's Den.
Yeah.
You know, those are the things. I mean, those are like the big hotspots, right? And not hotspots of paranormal activity, but just of visitation.
Yeah. Of interesting. Those are the parts of the
Or-
battle that
Well,
were.
somebody's got to be there in order to experience something, so that makes a degree of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that was an unusual one.
That's interesting.
And those areas are more or less the monumented areas. So over the years, the veterans would come back and dedicate memorials or rededicate them, and again, and another emotional charge to the place.
Yeah. To have the participants returning again. Interesting. Well, we're running up against our time, and Bill, did you have any final thoughts on Gettysburg as we move to close out?
I guess the only thing I would say is that there's more to Gettysburg, right? It's not just obviously it's not just the Civil War. We know that there were German prisoners in the area during World War II. We know that there was the tank park there in World War I. We know that Eisenhower lived just off of the battlefield proper. We know that there was some sort of Native American activity, whatever it may have been, whether it was hunting or there was a full-fledged battle. Yeah, but it's just because we know it for what it is doesn't mean that there's not more to sink your teeth into, I guess. So I would recommend folks who haven't been up there, pick your poison, and what you're interested in, you'll probably find it.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's true. And as a podcast that's, put out there as a paranormal podcast, all of this is rooted in history. And John is certainly our resident historian. I'm, of course, a lover of history as well. John brings a lot of research. And so he's over here to yep, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. And I like to learn different things because I cover probably a wide amount of topics and go, a little bit more shallowly. But yeah, those are good points. And I would definitely recommend to folks that are maybe listening on the West Coast, if ever there was a destination as a United States citizen, Gettysburg is one for sure. One of those top 20, right? There's
Sure.
Sites you should go to see. Gettysburg is one. There's a lot to learn there, and an experience too.
Yeah,
You could touch
can
history in a
certainly
unique way.
they can certainly scratch the paranormal itch. There are a number of ghost tours in town. They're very popular, so you do have to book them when at least, especially during the high tourist season. But yeah, you can get your history on. You can get your paranormal on there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For sure.
We didn't even talk about the Jenny Wade house. I thought you might, but
Oh yeah.
maybe we'll let that go for now.
Yeah. Well, we got part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that and the Farnsworth is another great place, and I have visited there with my son a couple of years ago, and we could talk about those experiences. But that's part 2. So, folks, let's wish Bill well. Thank you, Bill,
thanks, Bill,
so much for joining us. This was as good as I mean, it was better than I was imagining. I mean, just great to have you. Great to see you again.
Yeah, pleasure to get reacquainted with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to see you both again, and I'm here if you need me.
Yeah,
I think we'll need you.
Yeah, I think that's certain. We need you, Bill, and we need you to be a continued character on the show with us. So, thanks again, and folks listening, thank you for joining. And we're going to throw it back over to the Mike and John who are on the other recording.
Yeah, the magic of time travel.
Yeah, where we just connect up with those guys over there in their place and time. Thanks again, Bill. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, what a great interview.
That was really interesting.
Yeah.
A wealth of knowledge there.
Yeah, I knew Bill would be a good interview. He's so smart and knowledgeable about the battle site. He's got interesting stories. I think we need to have Bill back again.
Yes, I agree. I think he's got a wide-ranging interest, which is good. It matches ours.
Yeah, it
and
does.
I think he has some experiences, paranormal and otherwise, that we can capitalize on. I agree.
think so too, and I think he had a good time too. Bill enjoys the discussion and the chat, and he brings a lot of good insight as well. And he even referenced Predator. I mean, you're looking over there, and I'm seeing you just smile for that. Yeah. So, that was even a good Predator, because if I recall what he referenced when you guys met, Doug was there. He mentioned that gentleman, Doug. You've met him,
okay.
and when Doug is certainly a good reference for Predator in that regard. So cool. All right. Well, I know we have some other things that we're going to get to, so I know that we've recorded some other parts, so we're going to get to those other parts, and we're going to string this all together. I'm going to make some sense out of it.
The patchwork will come together.
Yeah,
it's like a Confederate soldier's uniform.
It is.
So many different parts. Some of them are better than others. Yeah,
very good, John. Way to riff on the interview. So yep. But let me get to it. I'll stitch it all together, and this episode will continue. My son Jake had his own brush with the dead on the battlefield. As near as we can tell from his memory and examining the current map of Gettysburg, Jake and his friends were on Wainwright Avenue. This is about 100 yards east of the Jenny Wade house and not far south of the Union right flank, held by Ohio, Connecticut, and New York troops. Their monuments are close by. Now, Jake and the girls he visited Gettysburg with are just teenagers at this point, so you can understand their mindset. And with that in mind, Jake said it was summertime and it was already dark, so it was about 9 p.m. or so. They were walking down Wainwright after having ice cream at the shop that is nearby, and they approached a wooded spot. Jake, again, a young teenager, decides he is going to enter the woods, and while there, he says, I was going to whoop and try and scare the girls. Well, he did. He let out a whoop. Or some yell to scream them, right? He said, I don't remember what I did, but I made a noise. And it was then he said he felt a presence behind him, and his back became ice cold. He then ran out of the woods and explained to his friends what happened. When they examined him, Jake had scratch marks on his back that started to sting. He said he did not feel it happen at the time, but he could feel them later, which is why they examined him in the first place. And that is where his memory fades again. So did Jake, in his wish to frighten his friends, actually stir up the spirits? Was it disturbing to them? Or was his whoop more akin to a rebel yell? I am told that sound was a fear-inducing sound. But at the end, who knows? And I will tell you, dear listener, that I'm going to edit in some actual rebel yells.
Yes, there are some recorded.
That the Smithsonian, my buddies, have of actual rebel veterans.
Yeah.
That they recorded because they wanted to have they wanted to have a recording of the rebel yell. And so I'll edit them in.
It's chilling, and they're old men giving them.
Yeah. Imagine, thousands upon thousands of young 20-year-olds, and just young men about to cross the field and come and try and take your life. Amazing. Interesting story. Thanks, Jake, for letting me share that. My brother is an intense guy. Matt has an incredible amount of willpower and self-discipline. He's a runner and applies this every morning. He also endures different self-directed feats of trial and tribulation. So many miles per year, endurance events, it's admirable to say the least. He is also a senior software developer, and in his spare time has written logic algorithms as opponents in software games he has developed. Again, this is him executing on hobbies. He's got a lot of discipline. Now, I say all this to set up Matt's story. You see, his other endurance feats involve reading, books. He devours books in marathon sessions of deep reading, pun intended. And the choices are far-ranging, but are also some of the most challenging. Now, one of them, Shelby Foote's massive Civil War 3-book set, is a huge amount of reading. Matt's read them. But the Civil War is one of his ardent interests, and this is where it gets interesting. Not only does my brother perform marathon stretches of reading time, 5-6 hours, up to 8, he has lately taken to traveling to Gettysburg with a book about a part of the battle and reading in the spot it happened. See where this is going? So Matt is parked on a small stretch of parking spaces near Little Round Top. Folks typically park here and hike a few yards onto the actual battlefield site. He's a few hours into his reading session. It's a warm summer day. The windows of his truck are down and a breeze is wafting through. And then suddenly, on that breeze, came the smell of pipe smoke. Not a particularly odd thing to smell, you say? Maybe. Matt looked up and noticed there was no one around him. Indeed, Matt said he looked all around. It was empty. Just him and his parked vehicle. He wondered, where could this possibly be coming from? But again, pipe smoke is not an odd smell, and he turned his attention back to his book. Now, Civil War campaigning, like many war experiences, as I've learned, not by experience, is a game of hurry up and wait. Walk and wait. Wait. And then there's the get to the edge of the battlefield and wait. Then for some units, it's anywhere from 1 to 4 hours of abject terror, barbarity, and horror. And obviously for some, unfortunately, a hopefully quick and painless death. Now, Gettysburg saw a full gamut of emotions during the battle, but mostly the men sat in camp before and after the battle, dealing with incredible emotions, and certainly many probably smoked their pipe tobacco. Both in silence and together, these men and boys probably pondered their fates and most certainly thought of home. I'd argue home manifests the strongest emotions of all, next to fear. Once more, while reading, the smell came to him clear and strong in the air. This time, Matt's attention was piqued. There was no one around. He was the only one in the parking area. It was the edge of Little Round Top. If you're not familiar, this was an intense scene of the battle when the Union left was defended by Joshua Chamberlain and the troops of Maine. Ultimately, a bayonet charge repulsed a rebel charge that threatened to collapse the Union left. With the utter awareness of the grave battle, Matt said he felt compelled to speak. I'm reading about you and your battle, and I have the utmost respect for what you did here. He didn't smell the smoke again, the spell broken. Some soldier and his pipe reverted back to his instance in space. But my take is, if a hole is going to be poked in the universe using strong emotion and intense meditative focus, it would be achieved in exactly the way my brother experienced it. In my view, he encountered a glimpse into a long-gone time where men also were bound up with strong emotion. I believe he connected to them while reading their story. He received or resonated with the existing patterns etched there years ago. He was lucky enough to experience with one of his senses what that place might have smelled like all those years ago. And I also find it interesting that what came through was not the smell of gunpowder or the coppery smell of blood and viscera, but the smell of idle time, meditating on what the day had in store, and more so the strong wish to make it home. In the intro, we read Faulkner's Southern remembrance of the battle. But before we go, we should also remember the North's great commentary on the Battle of Gettysburg.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Abraham Lincoln, November 19th, 1863.
Truly, it can be said that Gettysburg is a haunted battlefield in any sense of the word.